Just a few words we put together, and we put a bit of music to it there some years ago. This is a song about Killannin, about this area, historic part of the country here. Right. And if you take the road from Galway and travel to the west, you'll find a place of beauty. It's the place we love the best, and its name it is Killannin. It's a famous place of yore, and it lies in scenic country by lovely Rosslake shore. The place is quiet and peaceful, and pretty as you please. A pleasant place to spend a while. There's a welcome at each door in the village of Killannin by lovely Rosslake shore. Rosslake it is quite famous, coarse fishing at its best. It is an angler's paradise where they come to fish and rest. Fond memories they take away to their folks across the sea. I've never seen this like before, and everyone is pleased. St. Annin built her first church here in the year 442, and generations of her flock made pilgrimage here too. Her holy well it cured all ills, they came from miles away to praise and venerate her name, our patron saint today. And now we have our heroes, footballers of great fame. We've Kevin, Gary, Richie and Eve, with distinction play the game. They're proud of their traditions, their homeland friends galore, and they live here in Killannin by lovely Rosslake shore. Sinead.
And we just noticed how the script on it was so very, very rural script, you know, nothing decorative.
Yes.
The man manufactured this himself before he died. Well, we don't know where he came from. He was definitely a local.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few families here, about 3 families of Welbys around the place, and there's 1 or 2 in the other area as well. So it seems that he got to work on the stone in preparation for his death, the poor man.
Michael, when was he buried, sir?
I'm afraid I cannot say.
1848, yeah, we think.
1848.
Just by tracing over
Is that right? Yes.
181.
Just about the end, coming to the end of the famine years. He probably died. You know, as a result of the famine, I suppose. Maybe he got those terrible diseases that were prevalent at the time, and of course, no cures in those days. He a tidy little job, like, you know, tidy little job. This graveyard was, we'd say modernised.
Yes.
In 1950. 51, 52, when the council rebuilt the wall around it, and they did more or less settled up the stones and all there, and bedded them in concrete, because it was beginning to fall down at that time.
Who was the last person to be buried here in this graveyard? Was it Rosie O'Connor?
Rosie O'Connor was one of the last.
Yeah. She'd be one of them.
Who was that funeral we were at the other evening?
What, 2 years ago?
Yeah,
exactly. It will be 2 years now.
Yeah.
Coming up to
Rosie O'Connor, yeah.
July, isn't it?
July.
Tiernan has a question for you, Mike.
What are all the rocks on the ground for?
Well, in some cases, these rocks are markers for graves. We'd say this could probably be the head of the grave, and there's the foot of the grave up there. I'd say that's how it was. That's why we see so many stones, and most of these stones are markers. And they were the only markers that the people had down through the centuries, of course. Their own formation of stone. And everybody knew their own grave because of the type of structure and what they used, how they placed the stones. And people who were there, they never forgot it. People that had been at those funerals. And you see people coming back and they're just kneeling down there in areas where no distinguishing marks at all. Only for the people themselves, of course. That'd be a very special significance now to the people who were here that morning or that day when that person was buried, because that's definitely one grave there, the head and the. Now, in some cases, it was an old custom that I think people were buried
Sideways.
but their feet
Facing.
towards the sun,
Yeah.
towards the rise of the sun.
Yes.
There's no room.
And I think, but in some cases, I think in this graveyard, I don't know if that's true.
Yes.
I cannot say about my
And I
grandparents
spoke
are there.
actually about this not being the entrance to
Yeah.
the graveyard
That
in
was
the past.
prior
Yeah.
to your uncle. That wasn't the entrance. It was over there by Matt's gate. He used to say the entrance for
The original entrance.
Yeah, and it just come down from your land. You know,
Yeah.
down the road.
The main
Just
road
come
was
over the road
from
there.
this village.
Yeah.
The main
And
road
down.
to the
Yeah.
Esker Road and to the church
Yeah.
was through our land over there, and it was only really an Arab boring all the way up, and just about the width of a donkey cart. Just that's all. That's all. And there's some of it left still. I preserved it there because it was worth holding on to.
When you put the wall up,
Yeah.
then you see
There's not
they
much of it
closed
left
that
now,
one
but
and opened
it was
the
the old
side.
road from Killannin to Esker, to the main road above, and it went up through over there, part of our land and part of we're coming up by Flaherty's land as well. You know.
This would be the newer part of the cemetery. You see, it was all over.
But
there
I'm under
behind
the impression that most of
church.
these stones that are here, they're all markers.
How old is the graveyard?
How old is it? How old is the graveyard?
I'm not certain, but I'd say, well, it was here a long time before the famine anyway. Judging by the graves, it'd be here. It must be 15th, 16th century.
90.
It could be going back to the 15th or 16th century. It could be. Yeah,
was
because you see these
1690
churches
something.
even.
99.
I've been trying to find the age of these churches, and nobody seems to know. The far one, and this was the Catholic, and that it was built there more as a dare to prevent the Catholic Church from getting too much light. I don't know. Was that a bit of a joke or not? But the old
That's
people,
what they believed.
they believe, they fully believe that it was built there to obstruct the Catholics. You know. So it must be
Obstruct them from the light.
depriving them of light. You see, and. Of course, in those days too, there'd be the question of the windows, the extra tax on windows and all that, wasn't there? In the cottages, and how they had to pay the extra taxes for the size of their windows. So maybe there's a connection there.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll move over. It had to be a burial place for both Protestant and Catholic.
Yeah, and that's unusual as well.
It is.
So where's the Protestant church?
The far side of this one here.
Oh, is it? I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet, so that's right.
It's in a much nicer state of preservation than this
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
How far down the back of the inside of it?
How deep? I don't know. I was never in there now. No. I'd be scared to go in there now. I'd say the ghosts are in there. You know.
No ghosts.
The ghosts of the mountains. No, we wouldn't. It's a very sacred place, I suppose, and nobody nobody ever interfered with it until somebody, I think there were people that came from across the water, and they decided, I suppose they were probably looking for buried treasure.
Yes.
They tried to gain admission, but they failed to go in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And would they have been,
so
would
they
there have
abandoned
been
it.
valuables there?
But we don't know.
Is there a history
We don't know.
to it?
It was.
I think they used to bury them to their rings. And
Nobody ever
No,
excavated it or anything like that. I don't know. Is it kind of naturally in the Irish people not to interfere with graves, and there again, I suppose we cannot forget the archaeologists and the wonderful work they're doing around the world, especially in Egypt. The old graves, coming across buried treasure, are there for thousands of years, and like I don't think we'll ever have such a program in Ireland, though. I don't think we will. I wouldn't fancy going down and tackling that job for buried treasure.
Do you have a question, Laura, about who's buried there?
Well, of course, it's the burial place of the Martins of Ross, and they were the landlords in this area. Of course, they were here since the 13th century. They were the Normans who were given charge of this part of Ireland. Richard de Burgo, and of course, was the leader of the Normans at that time when they arrived in Galway in 1234, and that's the 13th century. And of course, we had, as you know, the 14 tribes then, and their flags can be seen in Eyre Square in Galway. And they scattered around, of course. They intermarried as years went by, and they became more Irish than ourselves. And with the Martins, of course, they were given large tracts of land here. Most of these that came over with Richard de Burgo, they were given large tracts of land in Ireland, and a kind of a gift, a kind of a thank you, for having come over with them, and for having helped them to conquer Galway. It took them 10 years to conquer Galway. The third attempt, they made it. Anyway, of course, the kings of Connacht at that time, my ancestor, O'Connor was king of, what was his name? Phelim O'Connor was king of Connacht when the Normans came here. And of course, he put up a great fight which lasted for 10 years. They made 3 attempts in that 10 years to invade Galway. Eventually, he came with a massive army and into the city. And eventually, Galway became known as the city of the tribes. The 14 Norman families who ruled the place for 500 years. And they scattered around, of course, they went all around. But this area of Galway was given to the Martins. They were the landlords, and the idea was they owned the land of Ireland, and the people of Ireland were forced to work for them as servants here in Ireland. Now, we're very lucky in this part of Ireland. We had landlords who were very generous and very kind to their tenants, as the people were called, tenants. And they got on very well with the Martins. Never any trouble and never any friction at all. And some of them at some time or other, they might lag behind in payment of rent. And it happened to my own grandfather. He was one of the many that fell behind on one occasion, and they told him to come back and walk it off around the house in the garden. Now, I mean, that was a wonderful gesture in those days, to think that the landlords would be so kind as to accept that. Well, I mean, you know, in those terrible days. But I mean, my grandmother, she was forever grateful for their kindness to the landlords in Rome. Now we had Humanity Dick, of course, was the most famous, I suppose. Richard Martin. He was MP, Member of Parliament, for this area in the British Parliament for 7 years. And in that time, of course, he made a reputation for himself as being a lover of animals. It was said on one occasion that he was fonder of animals than of people. Humanity Dick. That's why he got the nickname Humanity Dick. And of course, he was one of the co-founders of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in the English Parliament. And Well, he's buried. He was also known as hair trigger Dick. He was good on the guns. He was a duelist. So he was flamboyant. Yeah, he was full of life and full of fun. And everywhere he went, we're told there was excitement. So he was humanity, Dick. So also buried in here, together with the Martins, is a brother-in-law of the Martins. He was a Major Poppleton. Now, Major Poppleton saw service in far-off lands, and on one occasion, of course, in the British Army, he became custodian of Napoleon, when Napoleon was a prisoner on the island of St. Helena. And it seems that they became very friendly, both Poppleton and Napoleon. And it eventually turned out that your man was being transferred, it seems, from his work as custodian. And before he departed from Napoleon, Napoleon gave him a snuff box. Now in those days, of course, a snuff box was, well, I suppose it was being used every day by most people. In those days, people snuffed rather than smoked. And when Major Poppleton was leaving, Napoleon, as a gesture of friendship and thanks, I suppose, for his kindness over the years, he gave him the snuff box. And it seems, you see, Poppleton, of course, was married to one of the Martins in Ross, and he came on many occasions to Ross House, just here, and it was here that he died, while he was in Ross. But while he was still there, and they held banquets, quite a lot of banquets in Ross House in those days. And there was a local man here, John Conneely. He worked as butler and waiter in the Martin household, and they thought of him very highly. He was loved and admired by everybody in the household. And I suppose, as a gesture again, when John was leaving the employment, Major Poppleton gave him a present of this snuff box that he had got from Napoleon. And I believe it was a beautiful ornamented box. So John took it home, and of course it remained there on an old shelf there for years and years and years. So it appears that some years later that John was showing the snuff box to somebody, and didn't the bottom break off. There had been a false bottom, or could you say a double fitting in the bottom of it. And there, between the two rows of steel, was a note, written, of course, in French. A note from Napoleon. Now, we don't know who that note was addressed to, but I think they discovered his signature on this note. Mm-hmm. And so it was only then that they came to realise how important this note must have been. Had it been found maybe earlier, maybe it would have made a difference to history, maybe not. We don't know. I never heard the contents of that note. So that's just that house, just up at the end of the village, a little thatched cottage up here, and that's where the man lived at the time. He'd be a granduncle of Thomas Shaughnessy there. Thomas that lives there now. Thatched cottage, yeah.
Oh, he lives there, and that's what
he does. He lives on his own there.
Yeah, but
that's where John lived. His great granduncle or his granduncle. Yeah, that's right. So that's the little story about Poppleton and the Martins and their connection with this village. Yeah, but as I say, everybody was high in their praises of the Martins. They were loved by everybody. They were wonderful neighbours and very helpful, and no such thing as, they were the very opposite to what we heard landlords would be like, and what we would expect maybe at that time landlords would be. They were the very opposite, and of course no wonder that everything went smoothly here in this part of Ireland. We never had any trouble during those terrible days of landlordism.
What happened to the Americans in Rock?
What happened to them?
Yeah.
When they
left.
Yeah.
When they grew up, is it?
Yeah. Like when they left Ross House?
Well, they were very much, I suppose, attached to England, and they all had high positions in England under the Crown, and as I say, one of I think actually two of them were members of Parliament. They'd be like the TD here. You elect them to the Dáil. Well, they were elected. You see, Ireland being part of England at that time, we all voted that time. Everybody voted to elect different people, like the elections here today. But instead of going to Dublin, there was no Dublin Parliament, they go to England instead. And so they were, most of them were members of Parliament. They were. And especially Humanity Dick. He was 7 years representing this area in London, in the House of Parliament in London. He was. But they all, of course, they all had their own. They all had high positions anyway, and it meant that they were keeping an eye on the whole of the area that they governed. So they might be going around from place to place, riding their horses and having a look at each area and to see was everything going smoothly, and were the people happy and all that.
Were they in charge of Connemara as well?
That'd be part of Connemara. It would. It's only 2 miles from here to that Ross House, but it's still in Connemara. Yeah. And they took in the whole of the area. Let's go back around Clifton now and all that area. All that came under the jurisdiction of the Martins here. They were over all that area. They controlled that area. They did. They did. And I think it would have taken in maybe part of Mayo as well. Maybe South Mayo. I wouldn't be surprised, but they did. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. They had a great time really, and they used to have lots of big dances in the house and parties, and they used to visit a lot of their friends and other lords up in different parts of Ireland, and they were always going over and back and visiting each other, and of course they travelled that time on a horse. That's right, they were all great horsemen.
We had a little bit of private investigation going on here while you were talking. The camera was inside, the mobile phone was inside, tried to get a shot of what was in there.
That's what the inside of it was.
Right. Can you make it out clearly?
Difficult to see.
Yeah, it is.
What did you see in it?
Yeah.
I just got the inside of it.
It's amazing the differences in the architecture, and how well the far one is preserved in comparison with this. So that's why we think the far one must be a Protestant.
Yes, but there's a lovely, like a raised altar or something in the far one as well, isn't it? With a beautiful scripture on top, but we couldn't actually read it.
I could read that 10 years ago now.
Yes.
And I can't read it today. It's kind of fogged up a bit. There's a lot of moss on it now, I think.
Probably needs to be
So
cleaned.
just clean it.
Yeah.
Old chisels.
Almost like wallpaper style, yeah.
See this one out here?
And that was the altar. That was the altar there.
Yes.
It's all gone now. It's a shame. But this, there was a Nat Jewel tomb in this place. And you see when the walls fell, it covered it over.
All right. Oh my God.
I see 1748. 1748 here.
Where's that?
We're looking at the crest up there, Brendan.
Yes.
Kind of freaky down here.
You're going in, Liam?
Oh, you fall down there.
No, there's 2 more people down there.
You fall soft anyway, Liam.
Oh Lord.
It gets a little bit higher once you're in there. Only a little bit.
What's the name?
Yeah.
See what a slate was cleared out. Get a much better idea because that's debris.
The ancestral home of the Martins was in Ballynahinch,
Ballynahinch, of course.
near Clifton.
Are the Martins all gone as a family? Is there any Martins left of that
No.
You said the last of was Grace, did you?
It died out. She all died out. From
When did she
1920, I
die,
read the
Jane?
letter.
She died
1948.
Well, I tell you, we used to win every weekend for stuff, especially for the cattle, you know.
Yes.
For the cattle seeds and all that kind of thing. And we were going down Shop Street. Shop Street was, you could drive down Shop Street in those days. And Shabazz was beside me in this passenger seat. I was driving away anyway. And we were supposed to go down to the Bridge Mills, which was down
Near Donald's.
straight down, Main Gas Street,
yes.
you know. And anyway, I was hitting off down. And we were just almost nearly as close as we were to the gate there, to the Four Corners, when he made a drive at the steering wheel and told me, "Away, one shot!" He changed his mind like a shot.
Yeah.
He wanted to go down Abigail Street, and not a word about it.
Yes.
Oh, lucky there wasn't. He nearly put me in through what he calls the window there. That
Oh,
I was lucky enough.
the
Like,
Four Corners.
yeah, and across the road, Anthony Ryan's is it.
Yes.
I was lucky enough. I held her. But he was very dangerous like that. He'd take a sudden, you know, a spiral.
Yes. And who was he married to? Was she an Irish woman or was she French? Or where did he come from? What was his? Was he part Scottish?
Irene the Green,
Was the daughter?
that was his daughter.
Yes.
Maureen the Kevassa was his wife. She was Dublin, I think.
Yes.
She was a native of Dublin.
Yes.
And she became a great writer, his wife.
Yes.
She wrote the Life of Emma de Valera there while they were in Ross.
Yes.
Oh yeah, she did.
Is there a story, Mike? I think I seem to remember to have heard that some local shopkeeper in Galway used to wind him up by giving him change and making a point of giving him the English coins rather than the Irish coins.
That's right.
Is that true?
That's true.
People like to tease him, like.
Yeah, he used to refuse to take the English.
Yeah.
He
wants Irish coins. That's right.
When his uncle used to work for him,
Huh?
and he'd go around and they'd ridges of potatoes and different vegetables, you see. And if you're going around munches, you're going around doing the vegetables, and the next thing is, he'd have to come out, do his own bit. And he'd be going around and they'd let him off, and he'd say, let him off. He'd be losing the money out of his pockets. And then they'd be picking it up. The lads would be picking it up.
Aye.
Well, he was awful careless, wasn't he?
He was very nice though, he was very
Yeah.
nice. He loved anybody that could speak Irish to him, you know.
Yeah.
That was it. They were his friends and that was it.
She
They
was
were,
a lady.
they were nice people, like.
Yeah. She was
They were
lovely.
nice people. I enjoyed working with him. I did. I was only young at the time. She driving the Volkswagen Beetle. It was one of the first Volkswagen Beetles.
Remember
This
the
part of the country.
time Jimmy went on fire?
He was a great man. He had Irish classes there during the war, you know. He started Irish classes
Giving them.
for the local
Yeah.
people.
Really?
And very well, they were very well attended, I believe. Because in those days, you see, the middle-aged people didn't have a chance of learning Irish.
Yes.
And it was a golden opportunity for them when he started up the classes at the start of the war. And nearly everybody around here, they all attended the classes.
Where did he come from? Was it France or Scotland?
Well, I think you could really put him in the same category, you know, as St. Patrick. Some say he came from Scotland. Some say he came from Brittany, in France. We'll never know. So I say it's the same. When somebody asks us about St. Patrick, we have to give them the same answer. We're not sure where he came from either. But wherever he came from, he turned out to be 100% an Irishman. That's all he wanted, to speak the Irish language and to live here. That was it.
Very good.
He became more Irish than ourselves. As the saying goes about the Normans, many of them, especially the De Burgos, changed their names from De Burgo to Burke and became more Irish than ourselves. But that happened, yeah. That happens. And he was much in the same, on the same track. Yeah.
remember that. Do you know where they do the machines now? Where they have the machines for cutting the grass and things?